The morning had the kind of peace that made Daniel Price believe, even if just for a moment, that the world could be simple again. A soft breeze stirred the palm trees lining the quiet streets of Brookstone Hollow. Birds chirped lazily, and somewhere down the block, a sprinkler ticked rhythmically, casting rainbows over manicured lawns. Daniel stood barefoot on his porch, the wood warm beneath his feet, cradling a mug of strong black coffee. He watched his 16-year-old daughter, Emma Price, laugh and twirl on her roller skates, her ponytail flying as she raced herself up and down their little cul-de-sac. She was a blur of denim shorts, a faded yellow t-shirt, and pure, unfiltered joy. Every few seconds she glanced back at him with a wide, playful grin, and Daniel couldn't help but smile. After everything he had seen and survived during his years as a Navy SEAL, this morning of peace, of family, of simplicity felt like the greatest reward. Neighbors waved from their yards. A golden retriever barked from behind a fence. The scene was so perfect it felt almost fragile, like something that could vanish if he looked away for even a second. Then the noise shattered it all. The sudden screech of tires slicing across the pavement ripped through the calm like a blade. Daniel's head snapped toward the corner of the street, instincts flaring to life. A black SUV, windows tinted dark, careened around the bend and slammed to a halt next to Emma. The doors burst open. Two men jumped out, dressed in dark tactical-style uniforms that could easily be mistaken for police gear if you didn't know better. They moved with chilling speed, their boots pounding the pavement as they rushed toward Emma. Their faces were grim, their bodies tense. Daniel's brain worked faster than his body. No visible badges. No body cameras. No marked vehicle. Something was terribly wrong. Emma froze, caught off guard. One man barked something Daniel couldn't hear over the roaring in his ears. The coffee mug slipped from his fingers and shattered on the porch. He didn't even flinch. He was already moving, fast and deadly calm. Before he reached them, it happened. The men lunged at Emma without caution or professionalism, only brute force. They yanked her off balance and slammed her to the ground. Her scream raw, panic-tripped through the street. They pinned her small frame roughly against the asphalt. Around them, neighbors stood frozen. Some clutched their phones but hesitated. Was this real law enforcement? Nobody moved. Daniel moved. His right hand went to his hip, drawing his legally owned pistol with the same fluid precision he had practiced 1,000 times. His mind narrowed to one purpose. Save Emma. Let her go, he barked, his voice cracking across the street like a rifle shot. The men flinched. They hesitated. One of them jerked his hand toward a side pouch. Daniel didn't wait to see what he was reaching for. A warning shot hit the ground inches from their boots, spraying dirt and debris. Not random. A message, stop. Hands flew into the air. They stumbled backward, babbling excuses. Daniel didn't lower his weapon. He shielded Emma with his body, standing over her as she gasped for air. On your knees. Hands where I can see them. The men obeyed, dropping heavily. Around them, the neighborhood remained frozen in shock. Somewhere down the block, sirens began to wail. Daniel stayed locked in place until real patrol cars screamed around the corner. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, shouting. Only thinly when the law he trusted arrived did Daniel slowly lower his pistol. But the fire burning inside him remained. The hospital waiting room buzzed with a sterile hum, the fluorescent lights offering no comfort. Daniel sat in a hard plastic chair, his hands white-knuckled and clasped tightly together. Hours blurred by. Finally, a nurse called his name. He rose, his legs stiff, and followed her down a bright hallway that felt 1,000 miles long. Emma lay curled on a hospital bed, wires and tubes attached to her fragile frame. Her face was pale, her body still. She tried to smile when she saw him, brave as ever, but it only broke Daniel's heart more. The doctor came in, clipboard in hand, face grim. Fractures in her lower back. Severe bruising. Compression injuries. Months of therapy. Risk of nerve damage. Daniel listened, stone-faced. His training made him hard to break. But this twisted the knife deeper than anything he'd ever faced. He sat beside Emma, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Her hand found his, weak but certain. And in that moment, Daniel made a vow. They would not bury this. They would not silence him. They would not pretend his daughter's life was collateral damage in their games of control. Ronald Green, the HOA president, had made a fatal miscalculation. He had unleashed the wrong man. The days that followed tested Daniel's patience, his faith in justice. At first, the police seemed supportive. Reports were filed. Witnesses were interviewed. But slowly, Daniel felt the ground shifting. Phone calls went unanswered. Meetings were canceled. Officials, once sympathetic, became guarded. Then came the HOA's official statement. Ronald Green's press conference called it an unfortunate misunderstanding. He praised the volunteer security force. He painted Emma as non-compliant without daring to say it outright. It was all legalese and polished lies. Daniel recognized the game instantly. He had seen it before in places where those with power twisted reality to suit their needs. But he wasn't backing down. He began building his own case. Door by door, house by house, he spoke to neighbors. Fear kept most silent, but a few, especially parents who had seen the attack, offered quiet support. One story became 10. 10 became 20. Other teenagers had been harassed by the fake security team. One had even been shoved for running too fast near the park. Daniel documented everything: statements, photos, video clips. He connected the dots: the fake badges, the unlicensed operation funded by hidden HOA dues. When a local journalist finally published the story, it spread like wildfire. News vans lined the streets. Reporters camped outside Brookstone Hollow. The police had no choice. Under pressure, they arrested the two men who had assaulted Emma, charging them with assault and impersonating officers. The dominoes began to fall. Further investigation exposed Ronald Green's illegal contracts and misused HOA funds. Civil lawsuits piled up. The pristine image of Brookstone Hollow crumbled under the weight of truth. Through it all, Daniel remained steady. He didn't shout. He didn't gloat. He stood tall, speaking quietly but powerfully. When the first trial date arrived, Daniel walked up the courthouse steps with Emma beside him. She moved carefully, her injuries still healing, but her spirit, that indomitable spirit, shone brightly. The trial was brutal. The defense painted the fake officers as overzealous volunteers. But video evidence, medical reports, and Emma's brave testimony crushed their defense. The jury found them guilty. Ronald Green resigned in disgrace and now faced criminal charges himself. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Daniel simply took Emma's hand and said, "We're going home." Brookstone Hollow changed after that. Real reform swept through. New HOA leadership, honest leadership, rewrote the rules. And Emma? She refused to be defined by what happened. She spoke at town halls advocating for children's safety. She worked with other survivors to make sure no child would ever endure what she had. Daniel often stood quietly at the back of the room, arms folded, pride radiating from every pore. They had fought not just for justice, they had fought for a better future. And they had one. Because when the world tried to silence them, Daniel and Emma Price stood taller, fought harder, and proved that sometimes, even in the quietest towns, courage could shake the world.